everyone, welcome back to another video where today I want to open with a bit of a candid confession to you guys. I've not been having the greatest couple of weeks mental health wise, which sucks because normally I'm on it like a Scotch bonnet when it comes to Doctor Who content, and there's so much stuff I want to talk about, but I've just not been in the right headspace, so I've just about managed to get my weekly thoughts out on each episode, but I apologise that there's not been more supplementary content as there often is. I feel really bad about it, but I'm back. And to start, I thought, what better way to come back from a mental health break than talk about Doctor Who ratings? That thing that famously doesn't divide people whatsoever. We've got some new statements from Russell T Davies, as well as some more consolidated numbers for the series. I wanted to go over them, give my thoughts, and kind of tell you where my head's at in terms of the viewing figures and what I think could happen for them to improve, but also how I still think Doctor Who is ultimately safe for the foreseeable future. Subscribe if you're new, that would be greatly appreciated. We are trying to get 25,000 subscribers as soon as possible. Please help out. I've not uploaded in ages and the algorithm's probably going to forget that I exist. So make sure you subscribe if you're new. That would be appreciated. But let's get right into it. So I want to start off by talking about the ratings for the series so far. Previously, I've talked about the ratings for Space Babies and Devil's Court respectively, but since then, quite a few other ratings have come out, both overnight and consolidated, that I wish to discuss. So first of all, we had Boom with an overnight of 2.04, which was a drop from the Devil's Court of around 300-ish thousand, followed by the 7-day consolidated figure of 3.58, so again, a drop of around 300,000-400,000. What's really interesting though, and what I imagine a lot of certain commentators won't have spoken about, is 73 Odds actually saw a huge increase over the previous week, 2.62 million overnight, and then 4 million consolidated, making it actually the biggest rating success of the season. And then Dot and Bubble came out with 2.12 million, once again a drop from the previous episode, but not as low as Boom, with a consolidated of 3.383. So that does make it, unfortunately, the lowest viewed episode of Doctor Who so far. However, that doesn't tell the whole story. Despite the fact that it is the lowest rating Doctor Who has ever received, it was also the most watched thing on that Saturday evening, which I think goes to honestly show more about where TV's at than it does Doctor Who in specific, particularly at this time of year. It's worth noting that, as it says here, nothing else on TV that night broke 3 million viewers. So I think when we're talking about viewing figures, when we look at, say for example, the viewing figures of the 2024 series, and we compare them to even viewing figures from 2018, it's kind of a false dichotomy because the landscape of TV viewing has changed even in the last couple of years, especially due to things like the pandemic and kind of people moving more towards streaming, including older people who were previously the majority of TV viewers and still are. When we look at TV viewing figures, we have to look at them in perspective with the rest of TV. I think the max anything got this week was Britain's Got Talent at around like 5-6 million, which pales in comparison to the heydays of, you know, Britain's Got Talent of old, but no one says, oh, Britain's Got Talent needs to end. Well, I would, because I don't like it. But my point is, no one's saying that Britain's Got Talent went woke. Do you know what I mean? And yet, it's still on a decline, but that's because everything is. To use an analogy, it's like a pie, and Doctor Who is a piece of that pie, but that pie is shrinking and shrinking. And what's interesting is, there's also a tweet from, I believe it's Cyberman Alf, who got up the audience shares for Doctor Who in its time slot. And what's interesting is, the audience share for Doctor Who is similar to where it was in 2013. The difference is that that audience has just gotten a lot smaller for terrestrial TV. And yeah, apparently according to Ratings UK, this is who was watching on BBC One, apparently. So again, this doesn't really take into account, you know, a lot of the iPlayer people who will watch later, and also obviously the even bigger component of the international Disney Plus numbers, which I doubt we'll know anytime soon. But I think the UK ratings do not tell the whole story of this series, because I've been on TikTok and I've seen so many edits for this series with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of likes from international accounts as well, accounts in different languages. I think that, you know, some people will see this as copium. That's fine. You know, I've got nothing to prove against anyone. I've got no reason to spin this, but I'm just looking at it from my perspective. When you look at the viewing figures in the UK, but you compare it to the traction it's getting online, I think that the UK numbers are not the whole picture at all. I think they are a fraction of the audience still watching, and I think that will eventually come to light. We also had the Rogue overnight ratings, which once again were about 2.1 million. What's really interesting about this series, actually, is that we haven't actually had a big decline in the viewing figures. Traditionally, when it comes to Doctor Who, by series end, the series will have lost at least about 1 million viewers for its start. That's not unusual. That's just sort of how it works. Sometimes it's more even. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 million. Famously, the example I always like to use is the Library two-parter, which famously is like, one of the best episodes, best rated on, all of Doctor Who in terms of the revival, and that only got around 6 million viewers in a series full of 8, 9, 10 million viewer episodes. So it is always natural to see a drop in a series as it goes on, as interest wanes, but it's interesting seeing the interest largely be sustained week to week to week, which indicates that the people that are watching are continuing to watch, which is a good sign at the very least. And we also had the 28-day figures for these episodes as well. Space Babies at 4.25 million. Interestingly, Devil's Court overtaking Space Babies at 4.40 million. It's a shame it's not higher, especially after 60th. I do agree with that. I was expecting the 28-day number to be higher. Apparently, this is like a paid thing on BALB, which is why I'm showing it to you via William Who. But that both did make the top 10 of the UK that week, so that is worth noting. And also, we actually had a statement from RTD himself talking about the ratings, which I would like to share with you, that kind of gives us a bit of a different perspective and a different number, which I think I want to explain as well. This year feels like a reinvention of the show. The new streaming era with Disney, any growing pains, anything you do differently going back? I mean, no, to be honest, I'm very proud of it. They might not be the ratings we'd love. We always want higher, but they are building over the 28-day period. Episode 1, Space Babies, was already up to 5.6 million and counting. So I'm assuming when he says this, he's referring to repeats as well. So things on BBC Three and stuff like that, which, fair enough, I suppose. So it is getting there. And actually, I was brought back in to bring in a youthful audience. That's been massively successful. The audience no one ever gets is the under 30s. They just don't watch television anymore. Those figures are astronomical for Doctor Who. It's their top performing programme in that bracket. I saw actually, I think it was the week 73 Yards came out. In the demographic of 18 to 34-year-olds, Doctor Who was second to Britain's Got Talent, which is pretty good. Because I suppose younger people are going to be the people who keep, buying merch long into their old age, theoretically. So it makes sense. I never thought it was possible, to be honest, but according to the people who juggle the numbers, targets have been reached and exceeded. The BBC are running around like mad things. So it's very reassuring to me that, according to Russell, the numbers that it's been getting have been exceeded, according to like BBC's own expectations, which is a good sign to me that Doctor Who ain't going anywhere for any time soon. I will wonder about spin-offs, because I think if they were going to launch a series of spin-offs, I think they would have at least wanted sort of 60th level view figures in order to justify that. Equally, it's worth noting that Class came out at a time when Doctor Who wasn't exactly at the peak of its popularity, with the sort of mid-Capaldi era, which, a lot of people have come back to reappraise, but when it was broadcasting, wasn't ratings juggernaut. But then again, that only lasted one series, so would they want to risk that again? But at the same time, there are a lot of issues with Class, so I don't fully know. In short, though, I don't think we have anything to necessarily worry about in the immediate future. I will be very interested because Russell has said that he has begun writing season 3 script, but they haven't commissioned it yet. Disney haven't commissioned it yet for a third series. So I'm hoping, that gets confirmed probably after this series ends, I would hope. It seems like Disney are pushing it pretty heavily, so I hope that they do continue the deal, because I do think it is good for Doctor Who internationally. I do wish the number was higher, of course I do. I actually think this series has been a pretty massive improvement over the previous era. Still not perfect, still some issues, especially in terms of structure and pacing and some of the character development. But on the whole, when I look at it on an episode-by-episode basis, I have to say I think this era has so far been pretty strong. There's not been an episode that I've gone, ooh, I don't think I'd watch that again. Well, even Space Babies, that I'd say is the most, bad of all of them, is still, mediocre to me. It's fine, it's serviceable, it's tolerable. The others, are either good to great in my book. So where I'm at, I'm very happy with where they're going direction-wise. If they can just keep growing the numbers, I think that'll be a good sign. I think, personally, if it were me, I'd have Doctor Who on either at the start of the year, so January, February, March, or later in the year, so sort of October time. Because I think this May time is a little bit too late to be spring, but it's a little bit too soon to be sort of that autumn time, which is where you're getting really peak viewing figures these days. I know people will say the April-May time slot worked for Series 1 to 4, but again, that's comparing, the viewing landscape from 20 years ago. When I look back at the 60th specials, we had things like I'm a Celebrity getting like 9 million viewers as like the peak program, whereas this time round, the peak program is at 6 million. So there's a lower ceiling. So I think if you want more eyes on Doctor Who, I would change the scheduling. I also wonder if it might be worth reneging on the midnight thing for season 2, just because I think it does do damage to the viewing figure as it exists, at least by a few 100,000. It might be that the BBC just don't really care about what the number says on paper and just care about, like, if it's getting enough people to watch. Because I think they will continue it no matter what, because to be honest, it's one of the only things the BBC has left that can be made into merchandise and can be sold to other broadcasters and stuff like that. So I don't think we're seeing a Doctor Who cancellation anytime soon. I mean, Russell even said if the Disney deal fell through, they'd just make Doctor Who on a lower budget. So I'm not worried particularly, but yeah, I wanted to go over these figures, kind of give you my thoughts and where my head's at with them. What do you think about all this? I'm sure the comment section will be lovely about this video, and they definitely won't get really annoyed at me talking about these numbers with some level of objectivity. Do I think the numbers could be higher? Yes, I've said that I think they could be higher, and I wish they were. Do I think that these numbers are the end of days? When you look at TV as a whole, no, not really. Do I think Doctor Who is going to get cancelled? Not anytime soon, no. But with that said, like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you later.